What's going on, you guys? Welcome on back to the channel. Now, the newest episode of One Piece is here, and with it, we got one of the most iconic episodes that I've been waiting to see adapted for Elbaf, and that is Luffy freeing Loki from his chains. Now, this episode, I loved it so much. I love how they handled Loki being freed, but the one thing that I have been seeing is that it's kind of split on how people feel about it. A lot of people like me love this episode and love how they handled Loki being freed. But on the other hand, a lot of people don't like this because they cut the big like Loki panel where he's looking down on Luffy. That in my opinion is an iconic panel, but I don't think it hurts the overall adaptation. In fact, I think the anime elevates this to a new level that I didn't think was possible. But how is the anime able to pull this off? Well, let's get into it. So, first things first, we're not going to really talk about like the first half of this episode. We're primarily only going to be focusing on the stuff with Loki. So, we're just going to go right into the underworld segment. So, first things first that I really loved about this entire section, I loved everything that was going on with Luffy and Zoro specifically. Simply because like you're able to see these two's ideologies really clash for the first time. We haven't really seen Zoro like question Luffy in a while. It's honestly been since like the beginning of Egghead where he was like, we're not going to go after Vivi. Like he was the one that was primarily against that. Like where he was essentially like, if it comes up and we need to go help Vivi, we'll go save her. But right now we're not doing that. Like we haven't really seen Zoro like openly oppose Luffy since that point. And in this episode, we're actively seeing Zoro like oppose Luffy and kind of be like his foil in this episode, like his honestly like opposing foil in this episode, which I really liked a lot. Like you're seeing Zoro like talk to Luffy where Luffy right off rip wants to go and free Loki from his chains right away. But Zoro is completely different, where Zoro is essentially like, I haven't even talked to Loki yet. This is the first time I've met him. He's all beaten up. I don't know anything about this guy. All I'm hearing is all these awful stories about him, and you just want to free him right away? No, we have to talk first. I love that because I just love seeing Zoro oppose Luffy like in this way. It creates such good dramatic tension that One Piece, in my opinion, really needs from the crew at some points. Like, yes, I love that the crew is like one big family, but I also love when we have stuff like this because it reminds me of arcs like Water 7 and Ennie's Lobby, where you have the crew kind of like splintering in some ways, but they're not like breaking apart. That's why I love this section so much. You get to see like Zoro openly question Luffy. That's such a good moment for his character because it shows that as the second mate, he's not willing to just like follow Luffy blindly. Yes, he doesn't want to step on his captain's toes when it comes to things like fighting Gabon, and he'll intervene when he feels like he needs to. But stuff like this, when it's something this important and like this monumental, freeing Loki, like what if he goes on a rampage and then like we ruin Elbath as a result of that? Like that's the stuff that Zoro's thinking about as the second mate because all Luffy's thinking about is freeing Loki because that's become like his friend. He sees him as more like of a friend because he had that interaction with him earlier in the arc. But Zoro doesn't have that. All Zoro knows is all the negative parts about him, all the things that the people of Elbath have said about Loki. All he knows is like the negative. All he knows is the bad. All he knows is that Loki could go on a rampage and destroy Elbath. That's all Zoro knows. So seeing him be that foil to Luffy, openly oppose him in that moment is so good for his character. I love that. Like that's the best. And then when you see him like jump up, and this is actually one of my favorite parts too. When you see him attack Loki in that moment, and you see Loki just let out like a scream of pain because he you're seeing that his wounds are still deeply affecting him. That's when Zoro is like, okay, I trust him now because he can tell that the wounds are legit. Like the amount of blood that's coming out is not normal from that attack that Zoro gave him. So now he knows that the wounds are legit. He knows that something happened to him, and he knows someone attacked him to a degree that it left this much of an effect on him. So that's what I like. I like that in that moment, like that's when Zoro's like, okay, now we can trust him because up until that point, like we had Luffy and Zoro glaring at each other, which is something we have not seen in a very long time. So that was such a great section. I thought that was such a good section for Zoro because, like with the last episode, we're adding more dimensions to Zoro. I feel as a character, where I feel like that was stuff that was missing in the manga adaptation. Like here, like in the manga, they didn't really give us like Zoro and like everything that I talked about with Gabon last episode, where he didn't want to like step on any toes with Luffy and like didn't want to intervene until the time was right. But and now here we have Zoro openly opposing Luffy and questioning him openly. I like that a lot. That was such a good moment. And then after that, where we essentially see, actually we have another moment too, where Zoro's like, let's just cook up those like animals we see there, and then Luffy's essentially like, no, we cannot cook animals that are our friends or that we've bonded with. I like that a lot. That's another way that Zoro and Luffy are kind of clashing a little bit ideology. That would like this whole episode is really good for Luffy and Zoro ideology clashes. That was so good to me. That's what I like. Honestly some of the things that I liked the most from this episode. But moving on from that, because I could talk about the Luffy and Zoro stuff essentially all day. Next, we have like Hajrudin and Gerd and everybody from above with Sanji crashing down like into the underworld because they're afraid of Luffy freeing Loki from his chains. And that's when we see Luffy save them with his Gum Gum abilities. And this is when the episode takes such a good turn because when you see Haruden come down and you see him actively pleading with Luffy, being like, please do not free Loki from his chains because we know what will happen. We know the destruction that he could cause. We know the darkness that he can bring. Like you're able to feel like the tension for in that moment that just couldn't have been like in the manga in my opinion. Yes, I was able to feel like that kind of dread in the manga, but here in the anime they elevated that tenfold. Like the looks on Haruden's face, like you can tell that he is just utterly terrified at the notion of Loki being freed. And if you read the manga, like yes, he kind of has like some like I guess reason to think about that, but once we get further on in this anime adaptation, man, like we're gonna get to see so many things, like in my opinion, like expanded on that it's just gonna make this even better. But then after we see Haruden get done pleading with Luffy, being like, please don't free Loki because we know what could happen, that's when Zoro's like, it's too late. It's kind of too late for that. We already freed him. And then, dude, this is when this is hands down the best part of the episode. I loved this so much because Vincent Chansard is here for Loki being freed. I did not expect this at all. I thought Vincent Chansard was on something completely different. I thought he was on ReZero. I didn't know he was doing this for One Piece. I didn't even know he was on this part of Elbath. So the fact that we get to see the animation quality just outright change. You get to see as like the chains slowly start coming off of him. You see the fluidity of the animation change. Like you, the sense of scale too, as Loki is being freed, is so powerful. You're able to feel like how monumental of a moment that this truly is. Loki being freed from his chains, free from his shackles, and being able to just rise again. And one change that I actually really like that isn't in the manga. Even though they got rid of the iconic panel of Loki looking down at Luffy, one change that I actually really like a lot more in the anime is when you have these dynamic shots of Loki being freed from his chains, being freed from his shackles, they actually changed like the shot. Instead of Loki looking down at Luffy, you have Loki looking down at Hajrudin, essentially like showcasing the divide between them, showing that like they're missing like important information between each other, showing that divide. That was what was so good because yes, even though the Luffy and Loki panel is iconic and it is such a great panel, this is so much better thematically and story wise because you're able to see like the divide between these two characters and how are they going to be able to fix this divide between them. That is what we're going to be able to find out later on. But yeah, just Loki being freed. You're getting to see him pick up Ragnar, and if you've read the manga, you know what goes on with Ragnar, man. And then like I said, the animation for this scene is just incredible. It's honestly some of the best stuff that I've seen from One Piece, and one of the coolest things that I've seen them do, animation wise, with a character. Like you can tell the animation team loves Loki already. So if they're going this hard just for him being freed, imagine some of the stuff that we could get later. Imagine some of the stuff that's happening recently in the manga. That's all I'm going to say. But if they can like do stuff later on in this arc, like similar to this episode with just him being freed, like the sky's the limit with this adaptation now that I'm realizing, man. I cannot wait to see what they do next because we then have that final shot of like, or Loki is essentially the final shot of this entire episode. You're able to fully feel like the gravity of this moment of Luffy freeing Loki. Like, is this going to be the best thing that could have happened, or is this like signaling the end of Elbath? And when you see Haruden scream at Loki to put down Ragnar and to not use Ragnar, we then get a beautiful close-up shot of Loki, and you just see like the breath come from him, and you see him just smirk. You see him smirk, and then it cuts to the to be continued. Dude, like this entire sequence was just so good. It like the grand scale of this entire like freeing of Loki is just beautiful to watch. I couldn't believe what I was watching because yes, even though we had to lose that panel, and yes, it's a great panel, everything that they did story-wise for the freeing of Loki, in my opinion, elevates the material so much more, making Haruden like more of a direct focus within the shot of him being freed, like just showing like the animation of Loki getting freed from his shackles and like the way that it all just looks and the way it like moves. It's just so good. They elevated this to a way that I never thought possible. And for that, I'm so grateful. But I think that's going to do it for me. This might be the last time that I talk about the One Piece anime for a little bit, just because now, after the freeing of Loki, we are now entering, in my opinion, like the worst stretch of Elbath. So I probably won't be talking about the anime for a little bit, but I will be back for the anime hopefully soon whenever we get to what I think is going to be happening within this core. If it doesn't happen, then I'll definitely be back for when that flashback it starts, obviously. But for now, I think I'm done talking about the One Piece anime unless something happens in it that I'm just completely moved by and I need to talk about it. Similar to the Luffy and Gabon fight and now this episode. So I think that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode down in the comments below. Is there anything that I might have missed that elevated this episode and this material in your eyes as well? I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts and opinions on this because I know I probably missed some stuff, but let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I'm going to talk to you guys next time. Bye.